So a lot of Sonic fans will be familiar with this character, right? This is Chris Thorndike, probably one of the most controversial characters to ever exist in the entire Sonic franchise. Even though Sonic X is not canon to the actual whole story, but he is a pretty interesting character to look at more closely in detail. So Chris Thorndike appears in the Sonic X anime show from back in 2003, Sonic X. For those who don't know, Sonic X is a Japanese anime show that was obviously, of course, just a show based off of Sonic the Hedgehog himself. So this character makes his first appearance in the first ever episode of the show, of the end of the first episode, saving Sonic from a watery grave, which I'm pretty sure we can all tell just by looking at it, it can be scary, especially if you don't know how to swim. And ever since that episode, this character has consistently appeared throughout just about every episode of the show. So he's a character who is often misunderstood, right? Often seen as a lonely kid who had no friends and was just neglected by his parents. And because of that, he becomes overly attached to Sonic, which people find annoying sometimes, especially in the Sonic fandom, the ones who know him very well specifically. So whenever I would see this characteristic happen during the Sonic X show as I'm watching it, I would often wonder, now that the movie franchise is here, do I think that this kind of characteristic will move on to the Sonic movies, specifically towards Tom and Maddie Wachowski? One thing that these two pieces of media have in common is that, of course, Sonic stays in a safe haven, right? In a house. In the Sonic X show, he stays in a mansion, surrounded by a lot of people around in the whole city, right? But meanwhile, in the movies, he's more of in a private residence and filled with just like, one couple and their pet dog. So we do know that in the Sonic X show, Chris was a very lonely kid, right? Who had no friends, who barely had anyone to spend time with. And because his parents were always away, he was often neglected. He was just someone who always wanted a true friend, someone to always be with. The American version, or the 4Kids version, kind of ruined this character a little bit. I mean, most American fans obviously watch that version of the show anyway, and because of that version of the show not going too much into detail of what Chris is or what he is as a character, it's pretty understandable as to why most of the Sonic fandom refer to him as annoying, as spoiled, as a brat, and just someone who is just annoying and just, steals screen time from Sonic from the show. Now, in the movies, we do know Tom is obviously an important character, he's the guardian of Sonic, the father, supposedly. And of course, him and his wife are trying to raise him, and possibly Sonic becomes, understands the dangers of everything. So one of my biggest questions as I compare these two is that, would Chris's characteristic, if it enters the movie universe with Tom and Maddie, would it ruin the Sonic movies and then just straight up destroy the whole movie franchise if it continues on, especially if it gets to the end? In the Sonic X show, we do know that Sonic has to go back home eventually, right? Due to time freezing up, and we do remember in the show that one time both of their worlds were collided together, and now at that current timeline, it's not the same anymore. So if Sonic stayed in Earth forever, then it would just freeze up time, and then it would just basically ruin time. I mean, not Sonic Generation style, but So if that kind of event takes place in the movie franchise, would the same thing happen with Tom? He would obviously be sad that Sonic has to go. He could say something like, he and his wife were kind of never enough. They wants to have a child, but let's just say that due to health issues that they could not have any. And then of course Sonic showed up in their life, and then ever since then their life changed forever, and they were just one big happy family, with Tails, Knuckles, Sonic, having their own family, and then those three as a team, it would just be, happily ever after, right? So if that kind of event was to happen in the movie franchise where Sonic has to go back to the Earth, and let's say like the last Sonic movie, would this kind of characteristic ruin the Sonic franchise? Well, there are a few differences here. You see, Chris is a 12-year-old kid. He's very sensitive, to obviously the very littlest things happening, being lonely forever, or, just crying when he gets seriously injured. And then adults, specifically, for example, with Chuck Thorndike from the Sonic X show, there are obviously, of course, they have some feelings as well. They understand more than the little kids understand. They understand why some serious stuff had to happen. I mean, bad things are gonna happen all the time. It's just life. That's just how it is. So if Tom finds out that if that kind of event takes place in the movie franchise, and if Sonic has to go home, would he act like that? Would he say, kind of like what Chris would say in the Sonic X show, would he say like he was the best thing that ever happened, that if he felt like that if he let Sonic go back to where he belongs, he would just be kind of lonely, even though he has a wife, he has a pet dog, but he's like more of a child to him, right? He kind of adopted him, basically. And even at the end of the second Sonic movie, Sonic refers to Tom as dad, he's taking care of him, teaching him responsibility, the good stuff. I mean, most adults understand the importance of important life lessons that have to be learned along the way, and then Chris had to learn that as the story continued, right? Like, right as they were about to get all the 7 Chaos Emeralds in the first season, he knows that Sonic has to go back home, and then, of course, around the end of the second season, he doesn't want to accept the truth that Sonic has to go back Earth to where he belongs. That obviously fills him with pain. But would it fill Tom with pain as well if that kind of event happens in a movie franchise? It probably would as well, but losing a child or just someone you adopt is probably more painful than losing a friend. I mean, they're family. Even though Chris kind of saw Sonic as family as well, you know, he was there all the time, he was there when he was down, and, you know, he was just the best thing that ever happened in his life. And then now that, you know, when something big like that, something happy, something good happens, and then it's just gone, you know, just going back to being sad and then just lonely again. But of course, he has his family as well, which even though they don't come home too often, and then just to see how he's doing, he does have his friends at school basically. But of course, none of his friends treat him as good as the Blue Blur himself. I mean, adding that kind of event for the movie franchise will probably make the story more emotional. I think Tom and Sonic are really an important duo in the movie universe. So I think adding something emotional like that will probably improve the franchise a little bit. I mean, it will probably make the people feel more connected to the franchise, unlike Sonic X, the American version at least, where it didn't go too much of a detail, and then everyone just viewed him as an annoying little kid who steals Sonic's screen time from the show, and then just at some point they'd be like, okay, is this show about this kid now? He was gonna do stuff anyway.
You or Doctor don't do shit.
But of course, the Japanese version obviously goes more into detail. I have no idea why the American version cut that from the show. You know, him just being actually lonely. We actually see his parents leave out the door. I mean, I guess they didn't want to make it too emotional, but I think that's one of the most important things about each story. Add some things that'll make the story emotional, that'll make the audience feel more connected to the story and feel like that they're actually there watching it in person. But we don't know how the movie franchise is going to go. We don't know if Sonic has to go back to Earth, because obviously Sonic X and the Sonic movie franchise is a whole different thing. You know, they're not canon to the actual story, the game modern franchise, how it's going. Even though they're both not canon, and then just comparing this kind of idea that I was thinking about, that like, what if they added this kind of characteristic to the movie franchise with Tom and Maddie? I would say that will make things more interesting to the movie franchise. I mean, it will probably make the franchise more emotional and just actually maybe even better. Could they even do it better than they did with Sonic X? Maybe they could do it, because even though Sonic X is already a good show according to a lot of Sonic fans, maybe it's adding something alongside something emotional, like possibly Sonic having to go back home to where he actually belongs, could spice things up a little bit to the franchise. It could probably actually make this franchise emotional in the way it has to be. So all Chris wanted was a true friend, and that's why he's so overly attached to Sonic. And then meanwhile, while Tom and Maddie are just happy together like the way they are, Sonic in their life, it seems like a kid, right? So having that kind of emotional where if they had to say goodbye, actually has to make it painful, then I would say that's not a super bad idea for the movie franchise. But just don't go full blown, this is super annoying. Like, I think they're both really good characters. I mean, if they go to the style what they did with the American version of Sonic X, it will probably ruin them for the movie franchise a little bit for me. That's why, in my opinion, the Japanese version of Sonic X is better. I'm not saying the American version is trash, but the American version just ruined a few things. Like, Maria gets captured instead of shot. Like, that kind of ruins it a little bit for me. I get that it's supposed to be a kid-friendly show. They can't just go full-blown dark. They have to censor a few things and fix a few things to either make it shorter and not waste too many kids' time, or they have to make it as less dark as possible, because it's a kids show, so you can't just go full-blown rated M for mature, rated R, rated TV, MA style. So I was saying adding this type of characteristic in the movie franchise would not be a bad idea. I mean, I do see it being a good thing. Now, obviously, some people are going to disagree with me on that, because obviously Chris and Tom are obviously way different characters. I mean, Tom is an adult, and meanwhile, Chris is just a kid. I would say something along emotion like that and that kind of characteristic will not ruin the movie franchise for me. It will actually make it a lot better, you know, more emotional, make it feel more the way it needs to be. At least I hope the movie franchise becomes emotional around the end. Like, it has to be, right? Like, I said it before, that I love when stories end emotionally and, you know, just the way it has to be. It's just not super dramatic, because obviously it's a kid's media, so you don't want to go too dark, even though Sonic Movie 3 was kind of dark the way it was. So in conclusion, Chris is a different character, but obviously adding his kind of characteristic with letting Sonic go in the movie franchise with Tom and Maddie will not be a bad idea in my eyes, but obviously not everyone's going to agree with me on that. We all have different answers. We all have different opinions on it. I'll let you guys be the judge of this in the comments down below, and just let me know how you compare these two characteristics, if this kind of characteristic was put into the movie franchise, and if you disagree, then it's okay. In the meantime though, I'm 100% looking forward to how the movie franchise goes next.